All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Pat Rice, editor of the News Journal, and welcome to the fifth in a series of candidate debates, this one with the mayoral candidates for Palm Coast. And we thank you for being here. We're going to get started in a couple minutes, but a little background is in order. First of all, I want to thank the Portuguese American Cultural Center in Palm Coast for allowing us to use their space today so that we could hold this debate in a way that enabled the candidates to socially distance, but for us to still be able to share what they have to tell you about the issues in Palm Coast and why they feel that they would be the mayor, make a good mayor. I want to thank Fernando, who was good enough to allow us to use this space, but also to help us with setting everything up. Is really gracious of him and the Portuguese American Cultural Center to do that. So the News Journal's debates in the past have always included a live audience in the room, but we can't do that this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, we're holding our debates with the smallest number of people possible so we can ensure social distancing for the candidates. The room we're using has been well cleaned. They've got hand sanitizer out. They've really done a good job of preparing the place for us. Through Facebook Live, we hope to replace our live audience with an even bigger electronic one. And we plan to post the video of this debate and all others that we've done on YouTube so that voters can watch them right up to the August 18 primary. Of course, it's always possible, and especially if I'm involved, that we could have some technological malfunctions. This happens occasionally. If that occurs, I apologize to the Facebook Live audience in advance, but we do have it covered. If that happens, we have our excellent reporter, Matt Bruce, here, and he's taking notes, and he's going to write a story that will appear tomorrow on our website, newsjournalonline.com, and then in the next day's print edition as well. So one way or the other, we're going to get the news of this debate to you. Just a couple more points about it. First of all candidates will have an opportunity to weigh in on all questions. And all candidates will also get the same amount of time for each question. So it's in the interest of trying to make sure that everybody gets equal time during this debate that we're doing that. I think we're going to have time for 10 or 12 questions, hopefully 12, but depending on how the conversation goes between the candidates, it could be 10 questions. If it happens as we're going around that after everybody's answered a question, that there's a need for somebody to respond to somebody, that there's a difference of opinion, or if somebody's name is mentioned and they want to respond, I'll make that as a judgment call. That's the way that we're gonna go forward. And then at the end of it, each candidate will get 2 minutes to give a closing statement, whatever they want to let you know about them as a candidate. And then we'll be done. So, with that in mind, let's start and let's introduce each of the candidates. And we'll start with John Brady. Mr. Brady is originally from Jersey City, New Jersey, and he also lived in Pennsylvania before moving to Palm Coast. In Pennsylvania, he worked in a number of positions that provided crisis counseling and child protective services. In Flagler County, Mr. Brady has been involved in a variety of community activities. He and his wife, what is your wife's name? Julia. I apologize, I couldn't find it in your literature, but he and his wife, Julia, have been married for 51 years and have 8 children. Got to read this number because it's so big. 20 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. 22 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. Mr. Brady, welcome to tonight's debate.
Thank you.
And our next candidate is Donald Alan Greene. And Mr. Greene was born in South Carolina and moved to Miami at age 3, so he considers himself to be a Florida native. In 1967, Mr. Greene joined the military. He served in both the Navy and the Army.
1976.
Right, what did I say?
67.
Oh, my
That would
apologies.
put me about 10 years older.
All right. Well, my apologies.
No worries.
And he retired with 24 years of service in 2000. After retirement, Mr. Greene served as a defense contractor in Iraq, a job he retired from in 2016. Mr. Greene now owns an art studio that specializes in teaching Bob Ross painting techniques. And Mr. Greene, welcome to tonight's debate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next candidate is Alan Lowe. Mr. Lowe, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to call everybody Mr. So.
That was my father. You can call me.
Okay.
I don't call much Lowe.
All right. So, Mr. Lowe was born in Gloucester, Massachusetts. On the day America's first astronaut, Alan Shepard, went into space. And that makes you younger than me. He moved to Palm Coast in 1983, initially working with his father in the home construction business until beginning his own pool service and construction company. In addition, he has patented 2 inventions and has been working on a spacesuit design, which is something else I can't do. So, Mr. Lowe, welcome to tonight's debate.
Thank you.
And finally, Michael Schottey. Mr. Schottey was raised in Michigan and earned his bachelor's degree in liberal arts from Martin Luther College. He is currently attending Park University, seeking a master's degree in public administration. Mr. Schottey also served in 2019 and 2020 as the communications director for Palm Coast. He has volunteered with Habitat for Humanity and United Way and is on the board of directors of the Young Professionals Group of Flagler County. And he's vice president of the Mad Dogs Flag Football of Palm Coast. Mr. Schottey and his wife Stacy have 2 sons, Joshua and Silas. Mr. Schottey, welcome to tonight's debate.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So I need to, as we know, there are 5 candidates for mayor, and one of the candidates is the current mayor, Milissa Holland. I want to just explain a little bit before we get started with questions as to why Ms. Holland isn't here. When we set the date for this debate, all 4 the candidates who are here agreed that this date worked for them. Ms. Holland informed me that the date would not work for her. So I asked her if she could give me an alternative date that I could then run by the other candidates in the hopes that we could get all 5 of you here. She never got back to me with an alternative date. So we're going on with these 4 candidates, and Ms. Holland had told me that she could not be here because of a personal matter, and that was her issue. So I don't want people to think that we didn't invite the mayor here, so I wanted to explain as best I could why she's not here and why the other candidates are. So with that, why don't we get started with the questions? And the first question will go to Mr. Brady. And here's what the question is. So a significant number of people in leadership positions have received severance agreements or simply quit at City Hall since 2019. I can't tell. Many of these people have left during the tenure of City Manager Matt Morton, who arrived here in 2019. The question is, are you concerned about the turnover, the management turnover at City Hall? Why or why not?
I am absolutely concerned. It appears that it would be what used to be known as a sick work environment. People are feeling a great deal of pressure. They're afraid to speak up. When they do speak up, they get fired. There has to be a whole review of what is going on. And people, the saying that I have is a new broom sweeps clean. What I mean by that is we need to look at the city manager. We need to look at the city attorney. Of course, if one of us is elected mayor, that takes care of the mayor. One of the things that I have heard is that there are some people who are doing work that isn't necessarily Palm Coast work. They're collecting a salary from Palm Coast, but they're doing work for Postal Plow. that needs to be looked at. We need to look at every job description and find out what people are doing. And if we have to hire somebody as a personnel analyst to do that, so be it. We need to get order, we need to get a friendly working, we need to make it a place where people come to work without fear.
All right, thank you. Mr. Greene, same question to you.
Yes, sir. You know, I've always been under the opinion that attitude reflects leadership. There's a lot of issues with the leadership in the city. There's a lot of bullying that goes on. I've got it on very good authority that the mayor has circumvented the chain of command, if you will, by going around the city manager and, you know, being involved in hiring and you know, internal operations and practices inside City Hall. And, you know, as Mr. Brady mentioned, you know, there's a lot of different types of activities, if you will, trying to keep this on a positive note. There's a lot of activities that are going on in City Hall that should not be going on inside City Hall. There's a lot of different agendas that are taking place right now that they really do need to come to an end. And, you know, the Palm Coast Connect and the whole Coastal Cloud issue is at the top of it, you know, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money. These terminations that we mentioned, that you mentioned in the question, it's costing us a lot of money in severance pays, and these are all coming out of the tax revenues. And, you know, the attorneys that are being hired to defend the senior leadership, you know, we need to look at that, and it needs to come in, and it starts from the top.
All right, thank you, Mr. Greene. And Mr. Lowe, same question to you.
Sure. I think if we look around the table here, we'll see that there's 4 candidates vying for the position of mayor. And that speaks something in volumes, because obviously if there's 4 people running for the same position, there is something wrong. And if we look at the articles that the News Journal has put out and some other news organizations, we get a clear picture that there's some commingling going on. There's directing staff sidestepping the current city manager, and all of that is against city charter. And as Mr. Greene mentioned, we're losing thousands and thousands of dollars in the severance pay, losing qualified people who should not have to go. And we do have people being bullied. They're trying to change their statements. The upper management is trying to change people's statements. We know that there's an ethics complaint, a valid ethics complaint going on right now, and it really needs to change. And the whole issue starts at the top, leadership on down. And the mayor's not doing her job properly. The city manager has hired an attorney to investigate the investigation against the city. It's just foolishness. And as Mr. Brady said, we need to take a broom and do a sweep and clean this mess up.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Schottey, you get the last minute and a half on this particular question.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the gentleman here, and they're all sort of snickering because I'm the one that this directly affected at some point. So if you're wondering why this matters to you, why this soap opera drama at City Hall somehow has anything to do with you who just wants lower taxes and a city that answers you, it's because of a misplaced focus at City Hall. When the city is intently focused on things that are done in a back room and the corruption of City Hall, when they're focused on special interest groups rather than you don't get what you need to thrive. You don't get what you and your family need in a city that you love. And so change does start at the top, but we cannot imagine and pretend that changing the mayor alone is going to solve this problem. City Manager Matt Moore needs to go. He has been complicit from day one in office in covering up the mayor's crimes. From there needs to be a line drawn between people who are just trying to do their job and keeping their head down. I know lots of amazing people at City Hall who absolutely do great work day in, day out. But from there, those who are complicit also need to go, because if they've been covering up those crimes or serving anyone other than the general public, they're no longer public servants and they should not be in that position.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go to the next question. And the next question is related to the first question, because I think we need to ask there are several veins here that I think we want to explore. So in 2018, the city struck a relationship with a local company, Coastal Cloud, to improve citizen communications with City Hall. Indications are that system, Palm Coast Connect, has improved city response times to citizen complaints, citizen concerns, citizen issues. But at the same time, as has already been mentioned here, various questions have been raised, especially in recent weeks, about the close relationship that the company has established with the city, including employing the current mayor. So what are your views about the relationship between Coastal Cloud and the city?
Well, I honestly believe that Coastal Cloud needs to go. Palm Coast Connect needs to go. The city has had a website for many, many years. It has worked for many, many years. It has been neglected for many, many years. If the point is to have a line of communication between the residents and the city, you could put a contact us page on that city's website. A fraction of what the Palm Coast Connect is costing us, and the add-ons that they're putting on, like Workday, and I've worked with Workday before, and it does not work. It is not a very good product at all. And they're putting on these additional add-ons to manage and work different departments within the city, and it's all being bundled underneath Palm Coast Connect. And this is costing the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the whole idea that it's not costing us anything, that it's free. I mean, you look at end user licensing, and everybody knows. I mean, if you have Norton on your computer every year, Norton wants $50 to renew you for another year. You're not buying a new program, you're buying a license to use their program. Every registration for Palm Coast Connect through the pandemic, so that you can get your updates and that you can see your City Hall streaming. Each one of those registrations was an end user license purchased by the city from Palm Coast Connect, or from Coastal Cloud. And at the end of the day, we're spending a lot of money on something. If there is a product out there that we need that could be used, I know there's a lot cheaper ones.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lowe, same question to you.
Yeah, we obviously here all agree that Coastal Cloud needs to go, and that the Palm Coast Connect app, in the end, is a waste of time and money. We can hire teenagers to write an app that can bring the public closer to City Hall. We could also just have City Hall actually interact with the public instead of putting up a wall, never getting back to people, answering phone calls, and forgetting somebody ever called. But on the Coastal Cloud issue, if we look back a couple years, we can see that there was an issue with Coastal Cloud up in Kentucky. And Kentucky had a contract with them for $937,000. That was the contract. Their licensing fee was $151,000. I believe our licensing fee to start with, without the end user agreements that Mr. Greene just mentioned, are, I think we're what, $108,000 or something close to that? So we're in the same ballpark. However, up in Kentucky, they added some widgets and some other things, and so their final fee at the end of the year was $1.3 million. Are we looking at that in the future? Are we not being given, the full picture? Did anybody do a business cost analysis to see if this Coastal Cloud stuff and the Palm Coast Connect app was going to be financially feasible for the city and actually bring back the quality that the amount being paid would equal? No, I don't think so. I have never seen anything.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
The issue at hand is the concept of a public-private partnership. There are lots of ways that public-private partnerships help governments, and quite frankly are the only way that a city like Palm Coast with razor-thin budget margins can get anything done. And so I personally have nothing against Coastal Cloud as an entity, and I have nothing against Coastal Cloud potentially doing business with the city of Palm Coast in a vacuum. But when you start wrapping in all of the other things that have gone into this, when you start wrapping in the constant R&D that is happening from the city of Palm Coast, when you wrap in the personnel that only exist at the city of Palm Coast because of their background with Salesforce and would not be needed in any other way, shape, or form. When you start talking about just the constant linking back to everything has to be Palm Coast connected, the fire department, Parks and Rec have lost their social media because they weren't pushing Coastal Cloud and Palm Coast Connect enough. You should not need an app to do communications. I've been a communications person since the day I graduated college. The company that I worked for, I was their 13th employee. I wasn't even getting paid when I started with them. That company sold for $170 million to Turner Sports because they realized you can do communication across all sorts of platforms. If you need a specific app to talk to your citizens, you're doing it wrong. And I think what we have is a city that for a couple of decades was almost antagonistic to their citizens. I'm looking out in the audience and I'm seeing people that aren't even my supporters here that have had some negative interactions with City Hall in the past and do not want an app to stand between them and their mayor.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Brady, you get the last 90 seconds on that question.
Excellent. One of the concerns that I had is that Coastal Cloud is a viable employer here in Palm Coast. Yes, it's costing us a lot of money, and this information that we all are sharing here certainly indicates that it's going to cost us more, and that's the problem. We were sold a bill of goods that this would not cost anything. Our mayor was complicit. She knew that it would cost money down the road. She had an obligation to her citizens to say, wait, it's not a free thing, it's going to cost money down the road. So it's all entangled, but in the final analysis, we need to get something that is cost effective, we need to get something that there is a return on investment, but we also got to be cautious in that Coastal Cloud employs over 40 people here that are Palm Coast residents, and they're all making a pretty decent salary. Maybe we need to get in control, and as Pat knows, I've written letters over the years. One of the things is that City Council has given up their authority, and they've let the city manager, and in this case now, the mayor, run amok. They have got to be wheeled in. And we, as mayors, or we as city council people, have to do our job, and it's that simple.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go to another question, and I'm sorry if I'm belaboring operations at City Hall, but you are running for mayor, so I guess that's okay. Mr. Lowe, the next question goes to you. So the city manager's name has been brought up, City Manager Matt Morgan, and he's hired private attorneys on City Hall operations, including the operation of the city's compliance office. The attorneys are charging the city hundreds of dollars an hour to do this work. Do you agree with the decision to hire private attorneys to investigate City Hall operations and employees? Why or why not?
I completely disagree with it. What should have actually happened is that the city council, the manager, and the directors of the different departments should have taken what the investigator, the internal investigator of the city was saying as something important and something real, and investigated it themselves and looked at their own departments, looked around, saw what was wrong, and tried to fix it. What Mr. Morton did was hire an outside attorney, apparently without city council approval. And like you said, I think it's $340 or $360 an hour, something like that, this outside attorney. So what they did was they hired a labor attorney to investigate the investigation going on in City Hall, instead of standing up and saying, you know what, the buck stops here, we look like we have something wrong, let's fix it, let's look into it, let's do something about it. No, instead they hired an outside attorney to try to brush it aside, to bully whistleblowers, and try to say, oh, nothing's wrong, everything's sweet here. And the entire public knows that's not true, and we owe a service to the public here to clear out what this is, and to stop trying to hide things by hiring outside firms to sweep things under the rug.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with everything Mr. Lowe just said there. But let's start with who the compliance officer for the city of Palm Coast, I don't know if I should say is or used to be. Jay Mayer is a decorated NYPD officer who retired from the NYPD with nothing but commendations, and actually sat on an FBI task force investigating white-collar crime. He has been commended for putting down not just like big cases, but like multiple murders at a time with some of the cases that he's put down. So the idea that someone could come in and clear his work for him is insulting not only to him in the work that he's done, but the fact that the County Construction Law was brought in on a sole source bid that Morton just told the public about in a meeting that, because of coronavirus was watched by maybe half a dozen people that weren't city staffers. And the only reason they were selected was because Rick Blystone used to work for the current city attorney.
Yes.
So this is a sole source bid that was done simply because there was already a connection. And this is just a pattern of behavior where when Jeff Mandel, the previous investigator of the investigator, was brought in, that was just because he helped come in and bust up the unions last time the city wanted to do that. So this is just par for the course where you're trying to cover up this white collar crime and you bring in people who the only expertise they have is harassing employees. And so I've taken a lot of flack being a whistleblower with sour grapes, but I'm one of dozens of city employees who are either former employees or current employees who are on administrative leave or current employees who are absolutely frightened going into work each and every day because of this kind of just rampant behavior from City Hall.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brady, same question to you.
As I recall, there was a $30,000 limit on what the city manager could spend without council approval. This contract was far in excess of that. So there is certainly disciplinary action for the city manager here if he went above his contracted limit. But you also said previously that response times are better. How do we know that? How do we know that? I've complained several times about grass not being cut on Pine Lakes Parkway, and it goes days without being cut. The trash cans are not, I walk my dogs there, and sometimes it's overflowing. Again, I write, I get a case number, and they say they're going to look into it and get back to me. 2 days later, it's still not cut, still overgrowing. So I don't agree that the response times are better, number one. Number two, hiring investigators to look at investigators doesn't make a lot of sense. Somebody's not doing the job. And the people who are not doing their job are the city council and the mayor. And they may not be doing their job because there's something funny going on.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Greene, you get the last 90 seconds on this one.
I get the last 90 seconds, so I can agree with everybody. And at the end of the day, I have to go back to the city attorney and take a look at this because, in all honesty, when I believe that the city attorney should be a city employee. If you are hiring out, if you have contracted out your legal services, if that attorney has another client, there could be a potential conflict of interest. And it's so easy to see, could there be, couldn't there be? I mean, who knows? And at the end of the day, I've had communications with Jay Moore myself, and all of these attorneys that are investigating the attorneys there's a connection, and it's the city attorney. And at the end of the day, it's like John said in the beginning, we need to do a clean sweep. And in all honesty, if elected, the city attorney will be a city employee so that there are no conflicts of interest there. Plain and simple.
Okay, thank you. And I know I promise you we're going to get to other issues like economic development and quality of life, but I've just got to ask one more question, and this one goes to you, Mr. Schottey. So last winter, the city attorney who you spoke to just a moment ago, instructed the city clerk, or told the city clerk, that it wasn't necessary to release some 2018 emails from the mayor to the city of Orlando and the city of Orlando officials. The city of Orlando did release those emails under the Sunshine Law. Two of the emails indicated that the current mayor on city email appeared to solicit business from the city of Orlando for Coastal Clown. It's something that she's acknowledged that she sent those, and she's called that a mistake. If elected, how would you address that issue with the city attorney?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Don said before, and I think we're all on the same page here. The city attorney needs to be a city employee, period. And it's not as simple as just hiring one attorney. There's an entire team of lawyers and paralegals that would need to be hired for a city the size of Palm Coast, and probably not just a single suite, but a growing department as Palm Coast grows. So that needs to happen first and foremost. That would happen the first council meeting. That discussion would start after I'm elected. But more importantly, there needs to be a culture of transparency at City Hall. Because what happened, and I was there, was these emails were seen as problematic. And there were employees at City Hall who were digging around through some of the public records software. And that software was then shut down, and that was only limited to the city clerk and the city manager, and I think maybe one or two others. But that ended any idea that this was anything other than a cover-up. This was first and foremost seen as a problematic exchange. That the city manager himself told me that this was a problematic exchange, and his exact words were, "They got her." And for months, the city refused to release these emails. And I'll say this: I used to be a journalist. The exemptions to Sunshine Law cannot be used to cover up a crime. If this is problematic, if anyone at City Hall thought this was problematic, you cannot hide those emails. That is the exact reason Florida Sunshine Law exists, and that is the exact reason why you released those emails when Brian McMillan requested them.
All right, thank you. And same question to you, Mr. Brady.
Can I have their time to respond on this? You guys are in my wheelhouse. The city attorney. I've had disputes with the city attorney way back when, as an attorney, he didn't understand the meaning of the word shall. Shall did not mean shall or must. It meant, well, we can appoint a committee to look at the charter. In the charter, it said they shall appoint people to look at it. No, we didn't do that. That's number one. Number two, killing the damn dog cost the taxpayers $26,000. And he was, I think, he should be held for insubordination. Every one of the council members, you can go back and look at the tape, every one of them said they didn't want the dog put down. All he had to do was not respond to her suit, and she would have got a summary judgment. That dog would have gone over to the rescue ranch in Tampa, and the taxpayers would have saved $26,000. This attorney, it's a part-time job for him. He works for 4 other government entities. He lives in Orlando. He travels here, and we pay him for his travel time. I mean, that'll be motion 1 by one of us here, I hope. And we can hire, and you know what? I looked at how many times in a year the city is a defendant in a suit. 10 times. Every one of them were a real estate action where a bank was taking back a property, and for whatever reason, I guess they have to include the city. So 10, that's it. I'm done.
All right. I thought for a moment there you were going to use up everybody else's time on this question, but
I get a little passionate
all right.
sometimes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Greene.
I could have given you a minute or two.
It's your turn.
No, you know, and as I mentioned earlier, you know, the attitude reflects leadership, and you know, the mayor, and I said at the onset that I wasn't going to sit and poke shots at her, but she has a control over everybody in City Hall, to include the city attorney. She's going to do what she wants to do, and she's going to get what she wants to get. And at the end of the day, she's not going to listen to the city attorney if the city attorney told her, you need to release these emails. I'm not going to do it. You need to do this. I'm not going to do it. You know, and there's an environment there that it's toxic. And at the end of the day, you've got to be able to get rid of all of that. And again, by having an employee, you know, a group or whatever is you know, doing your legal team as employees of the city, it eliminates a lot of that. And you have to have somebody, you have to have leadership at the top that is willing to listen to the city attorney when the city attorney says, you shouldn't have done those emails, you got to release them. And then just go ahead and take the beating you're going to get. Because stand up, you did it wrong. Nobody's perfect, you know. Stand up and admit it and move on. You know, people will accept mistakes a lot greater than they will a cover-up. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lowe, you get the final 90 seconds on this one.
Thank you. So the question had to do with the emails. And what we had in these emails was a commingling of the mayor's private business with her role as mayor. And she sent emails out that she shouldn't have sent. And she claimed, as you said, that it was a mistake. Well, the mayor used to be a county commissioner. And as a county commissioner, she took an ethics class. Then she became a lobbyist and maybe lost a lot of ethics because that's the way lobbyists are. But then she became mayor and had another ethics class. So she's had at least two, and yet she still wants to stand up and say she's only human, she made a mistake and didn't understand ethics violations after 2 classes. If she can't learn it after 2 classes, there's something wrong there. And the attorney is also, as they said, complicit in trying to hide this out. And it was very fortunate for us that Orlando stood up and did the right thing and released those emails so that we began to have traction and proof of what's really going on there. And it's bad news. We've got attorneys that are involved, we've got commingling, we've got, you know, oh, I made a mistake, I'm only human, even though I took classes twice to prove I didn't. And this just needs to end. We need to stop this stuff, and as Mr. Greene said, the buck stops here. Stand up, take your blows, and move forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And now we're going to ask something that doesn't have to do with what's going on in City Hall. We're going to move on to another subject. We may come back to that, however. So let's switch to economic development. The city has been working to land a medical campus of some sort in Palm Coast. I believe it's in the city center area. What is your view of this effort, and will you continue it as mayor?
We've committed $1.5 million. Now, what does that get us? I look at things and in terms of return on investment. Will we be able to improve medical services here? Will we be able to have jobs for people that live here? You know, if we have 20 jobs there and everybody is coming in from someplace else, that's not helping us out. I mean, we need jobs here. So again, I don't think, based on the information that's been released to the public, that we have enough information to make that cost-benefit analysis. Yes, if it does prove that it would be a benefit to the citizens of Palm Coast, certainly. But I don't want to get into a rabbit hole where that 1.5 was just the beginning, and there's more to go into. And I don't want that 1.5 just so we can have some name on a plaque. I want something that we get back tangibly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greene, same question to you.
I agree with a good bit of what John said. And I've made multiple posts about this. Mednex is a school. At best, I don't know how many nursing professors that are still actively teaching live in Palm Coast. I don't know how many doctors, whatever it would take, that would be teaching these classes. It's a school. Now, the kids that are graduating high school over the next, let's say 5 years, this gives them an opportunity to take some classes and learn something. But what I want to focus on are the 40,000 people that are in this city that earn no money whatsoever. When 60% workforce earns less than $30,000 a year. You know, you're talking 20, 30,000 people. That school's not going to employ those people. That's not going to help them out whatsoever. And at the end of the day, we need to bring in some viable industry, some clean, quiet industry that can employ our workforce so that these people can start making money and they can start enjoying life and enjoying Palm Coast.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Greene. And Mr. Lowe, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. So, I agree with Mr. Brady that we need to do a cost-benefit analysis, because I don't think there's been one done. We're taking $1.5 million out of the city budget at a time when the economy is in a downturn because of the lockdown. We all understand that. I'm not necessarily completely opposed to Mednex in the future, but I'm not sure we're at the right time right now. And Daytona State already has nursing classes, and they're right here. So we're taking, essentially, we're going to partner into a medical school to teach nursing classes in competition with Daytona State that has a campus right here in Palm Coast that already teaches nursing classes. So I don't see the value there. Also, this is going to be a school, and depending on the way the school is set up, we may not get property tax value from where this building is built. And the tuition that the students are going to pay goes to the school, it doesn't come to us. You know, they're operating on a build it and hopefully they will come mentality that other businesses may set up along the edge of it, and we may make money off those businesses. But we're gambling with taxpayer money that something may possibly come through and something may work in the future, when right now we have businesses that need money. And if we got 1.5 million extra that we can throw into Mednex right now, why not try to help out the local businesses and keep things functioning in our own city, and then revisit Mednex when the economy's a little better.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
I fully support Mednex, and I think that the $1.5 million that the city has committed is actually a paltry sum compared to the money that the state of Florida and the Education Commission and then also local businesses have committed to this project. So I think this is actually an example of a public-private partnership working correctly. That said, I can understand if you disagree, and I can understand why some other candidates disagree, because this wasn't an open and transparent process. When I was going to start work at City Hall on Monday, the Thursday before, I went to a meeting at City Hall and learned about Mednex long before anyone else did. And I knew from that moment that I was working that weekend. So I donated my time on helping put together some of the materials that were going up to Jacksonville to help pitch them on choosing us for their Medical Nexus project. Now, the interesting piece of this is a few weeks ago when Jacksonville was covering the expansion that UNF is doing, they didn't mention Palm Coast once. And so although the local papers and the local media and certainly Mayor Holland have used this as such a pinnacle triumph for Palm Coast, the Jacksonville papers didn't even mention that it was existing here. And so this needs to be an open process. This needs to be known exactly what we're getting for our money, as the other candidates have said. And more importantly, you brought this to economic development. You cannot stop with Mednex. Right now, there is no one doing economic development at the city of Palm Coast. If there is an inbound call from a complementary business that here's Mednex wants to move in, and they want to move in too, there is no one to take that call. I've talked to investors and developers who have tried to call City Hall and have gotten the runaround. It is not economic development to bring in one business. You have to do complementary things. You have to build an ecosystem, and that's not what Palm Coast is doing.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to another question that is to you, Mr. Greene, and it also deals with economic development. So Palm Coast has this nice new city hall. I believe it was opened in 2015, and it's situated in the middle of town center. But the rest of the town center is pretty vacant. There is some development going on, but it's largely vacant. What would you do as mayor to accelerate development of town center in the area that's known as the Innovation District?
Well, good question. You know, they're starting to infiltrate, I'll use that word, the town center district, if you will, with more housing. It seems like our economic development and our business plan for this city is more houses. I would like to bring in again, like I mentioned, a clean, quiet industry. I like the aerospace industry because the aerospace industry it's been proven to be bulletproof with COVID-19. They have met every goal that they have set forth so far this year. They're still planning to go back to the moon by 2024. They're still looking to get to Mars by the end of the decade. And it's gone commercial. I would like to bring that industry into Palm Coast. I would like to bring that into Town Center. And for the love of God and all things holy, try to get it done before they build houses all over. Because that is our downtown district. And we need to have a downtown. Plain and simple.
All right, thank you, Mr. Greene. And Mr. Lowe, same question to you.
Sure. So, Town Center was originally envisioned as a walking, shopping, boutique-style shopping area. And the economic turndown in 2008 and so forth kind of slowed that project down to a dead stop. And that's where we stand still. The introduction of the high-density housing out there on one portion of the property may work in that area, but there's a large volume of property still available for these boutique-style stores. But when we're talking economic development and we're talking industry, and Mr. Greene just mentioned aerospace, we have industrial parks that can handle large industrial projects without interfering in the boutique shopping area. At the Hard Grove Industrial Park, at the back end, we have a rail line. And there's a company out there called SunTrust that actually has, Sunbelt, that actually has a rail spur for them to get deliveries. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be tapping into that rail spur, bring it a little bit further into the industrial park, and then reach out to large industry, such as what Mr. Greene just mentioned, and have available land that's out there. There's acres of empty land out in the industrial park. Have a rail spur where deliveries can be brought in, and work on economic development there, as well as improve the town center area with the boutique and the walk style shopping.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
So, don't mean this attack on John Brady at all, but I am always confused when I hear people say this was supposed to be our downtown. I guess Alan said something similar. What are all these houses doing here? Petula Clark sang a song about being downtown. People live downtown. There was always going to be housing downtown. The zoning has always said it. It's just not stopping there. And I think that's maybe what we're all trying to say, that apartments aren't the be-all, end-all. And quite frankly, I'd rather put apartments in town center than in an existing neighborhood. So I'm fine with the housing going in there as long as you're also, again, like I said with MedNex, doing more. And so as mayor, one of the things that I'm going to look at is innovation districts like Town Center, opportunity zones, which is a federally mandated program like Town Center, and see what they have done successfully. First and foremost, the opportunity zone in a place like Georgia, the city's escaping me, $7 million in grants at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic because they just had nothing better going on, so they started writing grants and brought in a ton of money. There is no one at the city of Palm Coast whose job it is day in, day out to write grants. The County of Flagler is trying to hire one, but those two entities have never worked well together. The chamber does not have anyone that if a company wants to come to move the opportunity zone, that they could call a chamber and get a hold of anybody. So you have no one doing economic development in a place where you need vast amounts of economic development, or, as the gentleman said, you're only going to have apartments. And if you only have apartments in Town Center is going to die. So we need to do more.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Brady, same question to you.
I think we should put a dollar store down there. That may be an inside joke, but no, I think there's two issues here. First of all, I'd like to address Town Center. And when I was a kid in Jersey City, New Jersey, we had a shop. It could be the butcher shop, it could be and above it were apartments. And lo and behold, I go to Boulder, Colorado, where my daughter lives, and we're going through this place. And here it is. There's businesses on the first floor and apartments. And the yuppie people are living there. And they have movie theaters and they have... So is there any way we could develop that? Because that was the original intention of Town Center. But the other issue with regard to economic development, What I would do is I would put out a call to business executives who are retired, if they would come to a meeting. Let's tap into what it would take to bring some of these companies in the north down here. What do we have to do? I do believe in giving incentives, but those incentives should be tied in to the fact that they're hiring people above the minimum wage, and it should be kind of like a sliding scale. If you pay them more, we can reduce your taxes a little bit more. But so economic development, I think, was very needed because we have a lot of kids getting out of school, a lot of people moving here, and I've heard some kids are working 3 jobs, and they can't even afford their rent on 3 jobs. So we need to do that at the same time we're doing something about town center. Make it yuppie-ish.
Okay. Well, as a yuppie, I don't know whether to take offense or say I
No,
completely
no,
agree with
not
you.
at all.
No, I so the next question goes to you, Mr. Greene. Is it you got the last one?
I
I'm
got the
sorry.
last one, goes Mr. Lowe.
I'm sorry. My apologies and thanks for correcting me. Mr. Lowe, next question goes to you. And somebody, I think, mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. So I have a question about them. They closed their doors. Flagler County does not have a Chamber of Commerce anymore of its own. And for the county, for Palm Coast, this cannot help economic development efforts. So as mayor, if you were the mayor, would you work to relaunch a Chamber of Commerce in Flagler County, and why or why not?
Well, yes, we need a Chamber of Commerce. We need it run properly, though. The last one, from what I've heard, basically bankrupted itself and is gone. I don't think the city should pay into a chamber. I don't think the county should pay into a chamber, but I believe that there should be supportive measures put in place for a chamber, because the Chamber of Commerce is where people go to network and build our local businesses. And we don't have that, and we're not in business. But one of the things for economic development is not only a chamber, but an economic development where, like Mr. Schottey said earlier, right now, if you want to call in and you've got an idea for a business in town center that might be ancillary to this Mednex, you pick up the phone and call and you get nothing. We need an economic development department that is in the city and put together by the city that can then collaborate with a chamber and push all of this stuff forward. I don't see why we don't have an economic development department. With all of the land and development and industry that we could have, we have fantastic opportunities in Palm Coast for industry, for shopping, for all of these things, and there is no way to get it done right now with a phone call to start.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm going to start with, it's Valdosta, Georgia. They've got $7 million in grants for their opportunity zone. But as for a chamber, I've always been a big proponent of the Truman quote, we can do amazing things when we don't care who gets the credit. And when I worked for the city of Palm Coast, I watched as the chamber, county economic development, and the city economic development department that used to be there all were doing the same thing at the same time in tandem, but never being allowed or even realizing to work together. One of the things I did as a communications guy was I took a long, hard look at our welcome kit that went to people who sign up for a utility account. So the city runs utilities, they know when someone's moving here for the first time, so they can do this welcome kit. That is typically the work of a chamber, and they're moving to Flagler County, and Flagler County has their own welcome kit, and the chamber's doing their own. And if they're a business, then certainly the chamber's reaching out to them. So it was 3 different people doing the same exact thing, wasting the resources that the chamber obviously desperately needed, that the city needs, again, with those razor-thin budgets, and obviously the county needed. So now we have a system where the chamber is closed. The 2 positions that used to be economic development in the city of Palm Coast are basically doing R&D for an app that we don't need. And the county actually lost their 2 top economic development people as well. One of which, Helga Van Eckert, was forced out behind the scenes by the incumbent mayor. So you have these situations where there was a brain drain trying to do all of these things because they wanted the credit. And I'm not going to say it was just the city of Palm Coast. I think there were also competing egos at some of these other places. But if we're going to get some of this stuff done in Palm Coast that Flagler County desperately needs, we need to work together and not care who gets the credit. And if there's one thing I can say as mayor, I'm not going to care about my legacy. I'm a young man, I could care less. I have a wife and kids who love me, and I don't need the kudos in the press for a ribbon cutting. So yes, we'll restart our chamber and we'll work together with it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brady, same question to you.
Yeah, I think it's sad when a Chamber of Commerce fails because of bad business practices. What is that saying? Having said that, let me talk about the economic development that was not done, but a person had a job and was supposed to do it. Again, there seems to be lack of supervision everywhere you look. You know, if you have an economic development person, the question is, what have you done for me lately? If I had somebody who was doing economic development for me, they would be on a plane from Monday afternoon, not coming back to Friday. And I want an itinerary where they were, who they spoke with, what was the prospect. They have to get out of the office. They don't sit in the office. So yes, we need economic development. And whether it be at the city level or whether it be at the county level, that should pay itself. That should pay its own way. And I think one more lesson that I have from where I lived in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. When we first moved there, Bethlehem Steel was going great guns. Bethlehem Steel built the city hall for the city for Bethlehem. They went down the tubes. So a major industry was on. What did Bethlehem do? They became the festival city. They had music fests, Celtic fests, Christmas fests. They had all of these fests that were run and earned money and brought tourists in. You know, I love tourists because tourists come, they spend money, and they leave.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Greene, same question to you.
Thank you. You know, I was a member of the chamber for the whole time I've had my business open for almost 3 years, 4 years now. I've been in business, but I outlasted them. It was sad to see the chamber go. I understand all the dynamics of why they went, but as mayor, we need to have a chamber of commerce in this city. This is a large city, and you have to have a place for people to go and contact so they get information about the city. You know, you talk about the economic development. It starts with the city. In this year's budget, they allocated $5,000 to small business development. You know, they'll put $2.6 million into the Parks and Recreation. But if you're not willing, the city needs to support. I granted would agree with the other candidates that we don't need to pay their bills. We don't need to support them outright. They need to be able to self-support. But we need to do a better job as a city in trying to help them out. And like Mr. Schottey, I could care less about a title. I could care less about taking credit for anything. I've given away more credit. Other people have taken credit for things that I've done, and I really couldn't care less. I'm like him. I have a wife. I've got kids. I'm loved by the Lord, and I'm good. I don't need to have anything else. And we do need to have a chamber in order to survive and be able to bring economic development into this city.
Okay, thank you. All right, and the next question goes to you, Mr. Schottey. So the mayor runs city council meetings, also helps set the meeting agenda. Beyond that, the mayor has kind of the same duties as the rest of the city council. However, as has been pointed out here by all the candidates, I think, the mayor does play a role as the perceived leader of Palm Coast, beyond running meetings and setting agendas. So how would you use the mayor's office from a leadership standpoint to guide the city to improve the things that it needs to improve?
Yeah, being the mayor is a full-time job. The city charter says it's part-time. It's not paid very much, and I have no intention of changing that whatsoever during my time in office. But it is a full-time job. And the reason it is a full-time job, and I think the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us, when you're watching other mayors on TV, whether that's LA, New York, or whatever city you're watching, you see what you consider to be a mayor. The city of Palm Coast does not have that form of government. It's supposed to have a weak mayor form of government according to the city charter. So the one promise that I've made people when they say, what are you going to do on your first day? What are you going to do on your first day? What's your plan? My first day, I promise that debate is going to come back to City Hall, because you have had a rubber stamp council for the past couple of years as a voting bloc went in that always just votes with the mayor. And there are minor debates here and there on persnickety little issues and how we might shade something. But there is never a black and white debate when you have 4 votes from the get-go. So, and probably now 5 with Jack Howell stepping down. So I'm going to bring debate back to City Hall, but I'm also going to be infinitely accessible to the citizens of Palm Coast. And that's where, whether the city charter says so or not, the people of Palm Coast think the mayor has power. And I can remind them, till I'm blue in the face, that I don't. But what I need to do is act as that conduit between citizens who think their mayor has power, who think I can actually do something, and then be that conduit to a city manager who actually has both the agency, which our current one does not, and the authority, which our current one does not, to affect change independent of what the mayor thinks. And based on what this election does, the other city council members are going to have that same opportunity, because it's not going to be my agenda, my vision. It's going to be the city council managing the city manager and that person running the city.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brady, same question to you.
Thank you. Right here on this little card that I got a whole bunch of and never got a chance to give them out, one of my things is citizen-driven decisions. Well, how do you do that? One of the things that I suggested was, let's say, Wednesdays with the mayor. And what that would be is I would go to a local business. We would announce that the mayor is coming. You can have coffee with the mayor. You can have lunch with the mayor. You can shop with the mayor. That will bring people in because they're going to bitch and moan, which is all right. But it will bring them into business. So it has a two-sided benefit. One, you get to hear from the people. 2, you're bringing people into the business so that they see Joe's New York Pizza or Lay's, Lay's, the department store, and they will get to see business. But the other thing is, we are representatives of the people we serve. It's not my decision, it's what the people want. That's citizen-driven decisions, and that's what I'm committed to.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Greene, same question to you.
Yes, sir. I always look at things from a military perspective, 40 years, and you automatically go there. I disagree with Mr. Schottey. The city charter set it up as a part-time job because it wanted to limit the amount of exposure, the amount of authority that the mayor position has over the city. If the city manager was allowed to do his job, and I'm not going to get into the strengths, weaknesses of Mr. Morton, but if the mayor lacks the leadership ability, the delegation of authority ability, just the simple lack of trust in the city manager's capabilities, these are the issues that add more time to that position. If I have to micromanage every single aspect of the city, I'm going to be working a 60, 80-hour week. It is not a part-time job. But if you go by the charter and you allow the city manager to do his job the way he's supposed to do it, the city council and the mayor is one of 5. They come in, they make the decisions, they do the discussions, they do the vote, and then they pass it off. It has to be a delegation of authority. It has to be a pass-off to the city manager for the action. They come up with the ideas, they vote on it, they approve it, then they pass it on. And without that trust that with the city manager, you're going to be involved far beyond what you're supposed to be, according to the charter.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Lowe,
can I get 15 minutes
we'll
to-
come back to that in just a second. But Mr. Lowe, first to you.
Sure. Well, I'm going to agree with what Mr. Schottey said and disagree with what Mr. Greene said. Although the mayor has no more voting power than a city councilman, just a majority vote passes something. The mayor is the figurehead of the city. And what Mr. Brady said about getting out and having a discussion with city people, I agree with 100%. And I also believe that the mayor's position, although by city charter may be part-time, it really is full-time. And fortunately, I'm in a position to give full-time to that job. I already am out doing, during my campaign, meet and greets and so forth, and pretty much every day I am somewhere talking with people, meeting with people, setting up meetings, and getting the voice of the people, because the mayor has to be able to understand what the people want in order to help set the agenda and help discuss with city council what the public wants. Right now, the doors of City Hall are locked. I will unlock those doors, and I will bring the voice of the people into City Hall so that we can have the discussion with the city council and bring what the people want, and not just agenda-driven politics, which is exactly what's going on right now.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Mr. Schottey, and then Mr. Greene, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. So you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree very strongly, especially because Alan said some of the similar things that I'm going to say, but there's two different ways to lead, and I didn't mean to imply what Don was saying, that I would somehow sit in City Hall and micromanage people. But listening to the citizens of Palm Coast, all 90, 100,000 of them, is a full-time job, and I think most citizens have a story where they had an issue, and whether they used the app or called in or just complained on Facebook, they could not get a hold of their city. That needs to end. You need to have a government that's listening to its citizens, and that alone will be a full-time job.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Greene, did you want to respond also?
Sure. You know, I spent a lot of time in combat. I cannot win the war by myself. I have to be able to delegate the authority down to the people that are supposed to fight the good fight and help me out. There are people at the city that should be running these apps. They should be contacting the city, not the mayor. And I'll agree with Mr. Brady, lunch, greetings, things like this, but it is not a full-time job. You know, you've got full-time employees that are being paid by the city. Tax revenues pay them. Let them do their job. Delegate the authority to these people. When you give somebody the authority to do something and let them run with it, you would be amazed as to what can be accomplished.
Okay. I'm going to go to the next question. I just, as a point of fact, and I'm just going to say it because I think I'm right, that under the city's charter, the council has, meaning the mayor and the council, has the right to set policy. They have the right to, their job is to hire or fire the city manager. And I believe the city attorney as well. Beyond that, I think under policy, it's up to the city manager under the charter to make those other decisions with other employees.
Correct.
I think I'm correct on that.
You are correct.
Okay, I just wanted, just for the sake of my own clarification. So I think we're running out of time, but I want to get two more questions in. So we're going to run a little over. I think you guys have been very interesting, so I don't think anybody who is watching is hanging up because you're being bored. So let's get two more questions in. And this one is, I'm going to just go in alphabetical order. If it's okay, you'll all get the same amount of time. So the first one is to you, Mr. Brady, and it's from a man who only gave me his last name, or his first name, Dimitri. But I wanted to get this out here because a number of you have spoken to this. And the question is this: what is your plan to address the need for high-quality, salaried jobs in Palm Coast? As it stands now, most career-age workers need to commute out of town to obtain a decent wage. How does Palm Coast stop being that town and become the town that people move to because there are good jobs here?
There's been a couple of ideas that have come out today that I think we can build on. And as Alan mentioned, there is a rail spur. We sell a lot of potatoes, and those potatoes get shipped somewhere to be made into potato chips. Why aren't we reaching out to the people who make potato chips and saying, look, you're spending a lot of money transferring there, so make them here. We have to look at what industries are here and what industries are complementary to them to see if we can bring them in. And that's where the thing that I suggested earlier of putting out a call to business executives to come in and talk to us. Talk to us about their company. Talk to us about what their company does. Talk to us about whether their company can be lured here and what would it take and who do we speak to and how do we go about it. I think we have enough retired executives here to get us some leads on some businesses to bring here.
Good. Mr. Greene, same question to you.
I have to go back to the aerospace industry. This past Sunday, I was watching the astronauts come back back to Earth from outer space, from orbit. And during one of the lull times, they were talking about zippers. They have zippers on their spacesuits. Now, their spacesuits are pressurized so that if an incident took place, they lost pressure inside the capsule during re-entry, the spacesuit is still pressurized like you would be in a cabin in an aircraft flying at 35,000 feet. Those zippers are made somewhere, okay? Now, at the end of the day, that is just one simple component that out of millions of components that are in the aerospace industry that need to be made somewhere. We're less than 100 miles from the Space Coast where they launched the rockets in Canaveral and Cape Kennedy. And logistics in trying to get all of your pieces and parts to the Space Center so that they can be launched is outrageous. They're not here because nobody has ever asked. You know, you have all these little companies like this, and I can promise you that the people that are making those pressurized zippers, which just blows me away because how do you pressurize it? Those people that are manufacturing those pressurized zippers, I can guarantee you they're making more than $12 an hour. Plain and simple.
All right. Well, thank you. And Mr. Lowe, I know that you've invented or you're working on a space suit of some kind,
Yes.
so maybe you're the appropriate person to follow.
It's interesting. Okay, so you introduced me earlier. My full name is Alan Shepard Lowe. I was born May 5th, 1961, the day Alan Shepard went into space. And I have always been interested and attempted to actually become an astronaut, but apparently there's a height limit. Sophomore year in college, I grew to 6 foot, and the height cutoff was 5'11¼ inches. So, however, I do currently have a FAA-approved maintenance manual for an IVA spacesuit, which is an intravehicular activity spacesuit. I also have the prototype design, which will be tested soon, of an IVA spacesuit. So I know exactly what Mr. Greene is discussing over here, and the zippers and so forth that he's discussing. And I agree. There are small components of the space system that we could build here in Palm Coast. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a rail spur out in the Hargrove Industrial Park that we could even do bigger pieces of equipment and ship them straight down to Canaveral that way. But to get all of these things going, we need a workforce that is trained in this area. And I'm not just talking about software developers and so forth, but we need a trained workforce. So when we go out to headhunt companies to come here, which I think is an excellent idea and needs to be done, we also need to say to them, look, we have a workforce here ready, able, and willing to come to work for you so that we don't have to pull in people from Jacksonville or Daytona or other places. We can use the people that live right here to work in the industry right here, to spend their paychecks right here, and rotate that money through our community over and over again, and that's exactly what we need to do.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
Yeah, when we've talked about economic development tonight, we've talked a lot about some of the same economic development principles that have been around since the 50s. That's the bare minimum of what you need to do when it comes to economic development. And especially as times have changed and now it's the year 2020, economic development is being done successfully around the country and around the globe in new and inventive, innovative ways. When you talk about luring companies, you're putting the cart before the horse. You want a big company to come here to pay people, so then you have tax revenue, so then you can make this place worth living in. People already live here. And so you need to love the place you're in and make it a place worth moving to. And I'm a huge proponent of the fact that government does not create jobs, but a government can create a place where companies want to move on their own. Because traditional economic development is very time consuming. You've talked about hopping on planes, making phone calls, and a lot of those instances don't work out. Your batting average is maybe 10% if you're lucky. maybe 1 in a million for some of these bigger companies. So you have to support the businesses you have. And right now, with no chamber, no economic development departments, and closing the Business Assistance Center, the entrepreneurs that live here already, the heroes of Palm Coast that are owning businesses right now, are not being supported in any way, shape, or form. If you need help with your PPP loan, or you needed help with understanding what to do during this whole coronavirus thing, there was no one at City Hall for you to talk to. So by supporting businesses that are already here, we create an ecosystem of success that other businesses want to move to by focusing on place first, then the people who live here, and those companies will end up coming.
All right.
Pat, can I have a 30-second add-on for Mr. Lowe?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things, he made a statement that, we need to bring in qualified people. When I was a senior manager for the defense contract company, I had at one point over 650 employees under my control. The bulk of them were logisticians, supply clerks. For every technician that you have working in any industry, such as the aerospace industry or defense contract industry, there are 3 logisticians that are supporting that one technician. So, what is a logistician? What is a supply clerk? Well, if you've ever done pack, wrap, ship, stock, store, inventory, you qualify. If you've ever worked at Walmart, Target, any one of our box stores, anywhere in town, the bulk of the workforce, they are qualified to support that industry. They're already here.
Ken, well, thank
Can I
you.
speak to that?
Yes, you can. 30 seconds.
Sure. I'm not going to disagree completely with Mr. Greene on what he said. There is a workforce here for the lower end of the jobs, the inventory clerks, the logisticians, as he said. However, that's not going to draw a industry here. I agree with Mr. Schottey that we need to look at our businesses that we have here already and support them. And as a business owner myself, I agree with that. However, if we're going to bring in bigger industry, we have to have a workforce that has the knowledge that's a little further up than the logisticians and the inventory clerks. Not that they're unneeded, they are needed. But we need to have a trained workforce that's able to understand, and if we're talking aerospace, they need to know aerospace HVAC, electric wiring, and so forth. So there's a higher end that's needed, and I think we should be training people for it.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go to our final question, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Greene, on this one. And I am returning to City Hall.
Uh-oh.
So, in recent weeks, a number of questions have been raised about operations within City Hall. They've received a fair amount of publicity, certainly from the Daytona Beach News Journal. One city employee has filed a lengthy complaint with the Florida Commission on Ethics. 2 former city employees and a current city employee have stated that FBI agents have interviewed them about city operations. I don't know anything beyond that about what those conversations were. But those things and other things have most likely eroded some of the public's trust in City Hall. So here's the question: as mayor, what steps would you take to rebuild that public trust?
Well, first and foremost, people need to understand that this administration, the current administration, is somewhat of an anomaly. People should be able to trust their elected leaders. They elect those leaders because they believe that they are the best choice to have the community's best interests at heart. And this administration has done a lot of things by shutting down people during the council meetings. They're up doing paperwork on their computers, doing whatever it is they got to do. They're texting. They're not even paying attention. I've made the comment several times that at the end of the 3 minutes, if the little buzzer didn't ding, they wouldn't even know that the person walked away. They really, as mayor, I will sit back. I won't have a telephone. You don't see anything here except a bottle of water. I'm not going to be fiddling with paperwork. I'm not going to be talking on the telephone. I'm not going to be doing any text messaging or anything else. You have my undivided attention. That's what you elected me for. And that's the way it would go down. And I'd pass that on to the city council members because if they got into that, they were going to have to get in it with me. I'd have issue. I'd take issue to somebody not paying attention. This is not why we were elected. It's to ignore people.
All right, thank you, Mr. Greene. And Mr. Lowe, same question to you.
Sure. So the issue of apparent corruption and so forth that's going on in City Hall right now, I've been here, as I mentioned, 37 years working in Palm Coast. And this style of pet project, under the table kind of thing, happened during the ITT times, and it happened all the way up through to today. The only fortunate thing we have going for us now is that perhaps social media and perhaps these emails that were obtained has blown the cover off this pressure cooker, and we finally get to see inside. And the way that we need to take care of this issue is, A, we need transparency. What we have to do is stop this investigator of the investigations and all this kind of stuff. We need to look at who is responsible, as Mr. Schottey said earlier, and we need to start, cutting them out. We need to get rid of the current city manager. We need to get rid of the current city attorney. Obviously, we're looking to replace the mayor. I think some of the city council needs to be replaced with some of the good people that are running for those positions right now as well. And I think we need to be able to tell to gain trust back, we need to be able to tell the public that we have a new management, and we're open and we're transparent and we're here. And as I mentioned earlier, we bring the voice of the people into town hall. We let them see what's going on. We let them see that we're getting rid of the bad eggs, if you will. And in that way, slowly, because it's not going to happen overnight, but slowly regain trust so that the city then has faith in the government.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, same question to you.
Before any of this started, the citizens of Palm Coast filled out a national citizen survey, and over half of the people who filled out that survey said they could not trust their city government. That was the number one thing that when I got to City Hall as a communications officer, I said we needed to change. I didn't know the number was 50% at the time, but I could have guessed looking at social media. Right now, for the citizens of Palm Coast, who are mostly from other areas, many people moved down from the upper Northeast, from the Midwest, from South Florida, and City Hall to them is just a shadowy building in town center that they never go to, that makes decisions, that spends their money. You don't know what's going on there, you don't know people who work there, you don't know your elected officials, because with very few exceptions, they're not really out and about. Our mayor is not an accessible person at the moment, and that needs to change. And I think what I'm hearing around the table is that you've got 4 people who are willing to change that, to be accessible to the citizens of Palm Coast. And putting an app in between 2 people does not increase accessibility. It can, but it's not a panacea. It's not the be-all, end-all fix. And especially when people use that app and still don't feel like they're getting good customer service. And so the other big thing is you cannot have a casual relationship with the truth. And so during this process, in a different format, our current mayor said that she has never raised taxes. And the person interviewing her said, well, actually, you've raised them 4 times. And you've actually raised the millage rate twice. And she just ignored it. There was no apology. There was no explanation to why she felt like lying in a written interview. She didn't misspeak. It was written. And so when you see, as a citizen, your elected official have that casual relationship with the truth, you're not going to trust them when they say they're working for you. And right now what we have is elected officials that are working for a specific elected official, the mayor, and a city manager and a city attorney who, because they know she's got those 3, 4, now 5 votes to vote them out, they work for her too. And then everyone else at City Hall does as well.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Brady, you get the final minute and a half on this question.
Great. I think the key is regaining trust. And there's a couple of things that I would do right off the bat. When you are going and having citizen participation, you have 3 minutes. When the developer or whoever is presenting, they have an unlimited time. If we're held to 3 minutes, they should be held to 3 minutes, maybe from different areas within their company, 3 minutes each. But it's not fair. We have people getting 3 minutes and we get told, you can only talk about this at this time. We need to put on the agenda the dollar amount of each item so that people know what kind of money we're talking about here. The second thing I would do is I would take those department heads who sit at the back and I would tell them, go to your office, stay out of here. Now, if you have something on it that's gonna be key, you stay for that part, but you don't sit in the back. Because you get up to complain about somebody, the people you're complaining about are at your back. And that just doesn't make any sense. So regaining trust, going out, talking to people, maybe telling people that that's no, and explaining why it's a no would be very helpful. But just being responsible to the people, listening to them. And listening to them means you have to be active in listening.
All right, well, thank you. And we are now at the point, we're actually about 15 minutes past what I thought we would be. But we're at the point where each of you gets to give a closing statement. And so I thought we would just do it alphabetically the same way as we've done everything else, if that works okay. So, Mr. Brady, if you are ready, you get the first 2 minutes.
I am. The person that I invited here today raised an issue with me, and he said, what are you going to do about the fact that you're going to be short because of this COVID virus? So I thought on that, and I came up with 3 Ps. We need to look at purchases that we're going to make, and we have to have a zero-based budget. In other words, if we said, you're going to have a new truck next year, when it comes time to purchase that truck, no, you've got to prove it to us. That's the first thing. The second thing we have to look at is programs. Are these programs something that we can do without because of what's going on? And the final thing, and it's a final thing for a purpose, is people. Do we need as many people as we have? And I'd be the last person in the world to want to furlough somebody, but if it's absolutely necessary for us to keep the lights on, then it has to happen. So those are the ways that I would deal with it. But I would deal with it, and I think we also have not dealt with the elephant in the room, and that is the COVID. What are we going to do about that? And I have some thoughts on that, but I wasn't asked that question.
Well, it's your final 2 minutes, so if you'd like to
I
talk
still
about
have
it,
sure.
you've
No,
got
with the
another
COVID, I have to
30
say
seconds.
I have to say that Milissa is doing a credible job with what she's doing with COVID. But what I would do is also be preparing for what are we going to do if a vaccine comes out. We should set a priority. Who's going to be the first people to get it? Where are we going to be able to marshal this? How are we going to get the staff to be able to do it? We should be preparing for that right now. And that starts immediately.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Greene, you get the next 2
I
minutes.
get the next 2 minutes. Outstanding. You know, we all live in Palm Coast. We live in a community that is in trouble. If COVID has shown us anything, it has really shown us how vulnerable we really are. We have retail stores that are closing for good. We have a lot of folks that live here that are unemployed as a result of the COVID-19 virus, and we haven't even begun to see the true effects that this is going to have on our community. I made a post about a week ago about the governor extending the mortgage and rent forgiveness program. Honestly, I don't know. I've been very busy. I don't know that he's done it, but I've seen on the news where people are now starting to get eviction notices for not paying their rent. And they would have to pay 4 to 5 months' rent if they didn't keep up with it. We are getting ready to see some very, very hard times. And, you know, under my leadership, I want to bring back the community. I want to bring back the trust. I want to start working with swale management. I want to repair the roads that have been tore up because the swales were not managed and they were underwater. I want to bring in industry. People can't, the big discussion about affordable housing. The workforce here cannot afford housing, even though we have some of the best housing prices on the Florida East Coast. They can't afford it because they don't earn enough. People are breaking into cars in the middle of the night because they don't earn enough. People are having to rely on school lunch programs because they can't feed their family a healthy meal because they don't earn enough. People are committing suicide because they don't earn enough. And these are all very simple issues that can be they're not simple issues, there's complex issues, but there's a very simple fix, and that is bring in better, clean, quiet industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And Mr. Lowe, you get the next 2 minutes.
Thank you. So we've spent a lot of time talking about what's wrong or what we feel is wrong with City Hall, but not a lot of time on what we stand for, what our platform is as we walk into it. So I'd like to take these 2 minutes and talk about that. So my first issue is taxes. Of course, everybody says, you know, we want to lower taxes and so forth. Well, the city has, by mandate, a balanced budget, right? So that doesn't mean that we're spending the money properly. That just means we're balanced. So what I would like to see is a real outside company come in and do a forensic budget review. Not for corruption and things like that. We already know that stuff's being investigated. But what I would like to have it is for wasteful spending. So that when we balance our budget, we can balance it out with proper spending and not wasteful spending. Another portion that I'd like to look at is mental health. As Mr. Green mentioned earlier, we have a high rate of suicides in Flagler County. In fact, we're probably one of the highest in the state from what I've heard. My father committed suicide, and it wasn't from an economic problem that he had. There was no economic problem. There were other problems. What we don't have here is city support for local advocacy groups. Although they've tried, and we've seen where they've tried to work together, we don't have it right now, and we need to have that. We need to reach out to some local groups, and for addiction problems, which can lead to accidental suicide or on-purpose suicide, and work on the mental health in our community. And I'm willing to have an open door for anybody that wants to discuss that. We've also discussed economic development and so forth. But one of the things we have going on is this 150-day moratorium on small box stores, which just puts up a giant black cloud over Palm Coast. I believe in free enterprise. If you want, and the 150-day moratorium on small box stores particularly pointed towards Dollar Generals. And I support free enterprise. If you want to invest your money and be an entrepreneur and open a small box store, go for it. Not all will survive. The population will allow those that will. But any entrepreneur in Palm Coast should have the ability to go ahead and open the business they want to open and see if they can make it. And I think we need to support that, and we're not supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Schottey, you get the final 2 minutes.
Yeah, similar to the others, I'm going to use this 2 minutes to move away from the issues that are currently in City Hall and talk about the things that I would like to make policy direction from the council perspective when I get there. When I moved here a decade ago, I immediately started telling my friends and family, and I actually have had family move here because I love Palm Coast so much. And that has not changed. We have some amazing advantages in Palm Coast, a high quality of life. We've got a beautiful beach, a fiber net system that is burgeoning. You can deliver internet faster than a cable company and cheaper. We have things that make people want to move here. And failing putting a no vacancy sign on the freeway, each year more and more people are going to move to Palm Coast moving forward, and every year there's less and less opportunity for them. That's not the way that cities thrive. And the only way this city is going to thrive is a government that's by the people, for the people, and of the people, and listens to people. And so from there, and you can go look at my platform on Schottey2020.com or Facebook.com/Schottey2020. But right now we need to fix a city budget that is 92% wrapped up in the property taxes you pay, or the property taxes that your landlord pays if you're a renter. 92% means that the next recession that hits, which many analysts are saying is coming soon, this city is going to be hit just as hard as it was last time, and bottom out just like it did last time when people didn't want to live here. So to have a city that thrives, you need to move away, diversify revenue. That means commercial development coming in. That means businesses moving in, jobs moving in. From there, when you have that diversified revenue, and you have a city that can actually spend money on things that people want, you start talking about sidewalks, fixing the swales, as Don said. You talk about building bus stops that children don't have to be scared every morning when they're sitting out there at 6 a.m. waiting for the bus. You talk about building the fiber net program. You talk about moving away from focusing so heavily on something like, and start talking about the animals in Palm Coast that are such a vibrant part of this community. There are so many animal owners, and the city tabled a tethering thing just simply because it was a election year. We can do big things, and that's what I tell my kids every morning when I drop them off at school. You can do hard things. Don't worry about it. Do your best and work together. Don't worry about who gets the credit, and you can do hard things in our city. Right now, the only thing our city is doing is being in the app development business, and I think we can do more.
All right, thank you. So we've reached the end of the debate. I want to say a couple things before we all get up and walk out the door. First, I want to thank all of the candidates. I thought that all of you did very well and expressed yourselves very well. And I'm not just saying that, I really believe that. And so thank you for that spirited discussion on city issues. I also want to thank the Portuguese American Cultural Center and Fernando for allowing us to be here. Without Fernando and the Portuguese American Cultural Center, we wouldn't have been able to put on this debate. So I really, really appreciate that. And finally, I hope everybody does the one thing that we can all do, which is get out and vote on August. And to everybody who is watching, thank you for watching, and have yourselves a good night.